But what do you think is the most important thing to share with this group? So I'll give you a little bit of time to think about that, and then I'll go first as a leader. But we'll give you just a quick chance to think about it here. I want to make sure we've got all of our folks. All right, so my name is Cindy Willard. I am one of the consultants on the Colorado Blueprint and Hunger project. I've been working with the project since we started actually convening folks. I know there was a lot of work that was done in advance of me showing up, but since we started convening folks in June of 2017, I'm having trouble with it being 2019, so I guess I'm having trouble with 2017.
Yeah, August 2017.
Started having these conversations, so something you apparently already know about at some time. But what I would like you to know in this context is that I greatly believe in this work. I do think hunger is a problem we can solve, and I am here to facilitate your work. So to really provide structure and the process and whatever it is I can do to help make this work more successful. As we think about leadership competencies and sort of how folks approach leadership, I have never been the person who's been the charismatic out in front singing the drum sort of person. I have been the leadership sort of person that facilitates and builds up and helps make all of the other pieces work. And I've always felt like that is my role it is. And I see that as my work. So that's what I would like to know. So we are welcome to go around if that's more comfortable. I'm also welcome to popcorn style as folks feel inspired to share. So I'm going to just let it sit for a minute. If no one pops up, then I will start it. So welcome to guys.
I think I need some order, Cindy.
Okay. All right, then we're going to go as far away from me as possible and come this way. So Bob, you're on.
I'm Bob Mook, the Communications Director for Colorado Center on Law and Policy advocacy group that researches, develops, and advocates for policies that benefit the health and well-being of all Coloradans. And I guess what you know about me is I'm actually looking forward to collaborate. I'm usually on my own over at CCLP, Department 1. So look forward to collaborating with all of you other professionals out here.
Great, thank you. But Leslie, before you pop in, I want to make sure that this is my mistake. We have our translator with us this morning. Would you like to introduce yourself? Thank you. I'm sorry.
No, no worries. I'm reading Community Language Cooperative. Sounds like someone who's been before, but we practice linguistic justice. So if it's in another model speaker of another Spanish would come in and give everybody a headset so that everybody can participate equally. And if that, do you mind if I have a minute? Give that person.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
And just a reminder too, so that the folks on the phone, when you touch the little button and it goes green, it means your microphone is on. When you touch it, it goes off, it's red. So particularly for this, when you are sharing, so please make sure that's on. Broadcasting. So thank you. Okay, Leslie, thank you.
Okay, I think I'm on. Hi, Leslie Scotland Stewart with Project Angel Heart. We provide medically tailored meals to people with life-threatening illness. And I'm the Director of Healthcare Innovation. So working with healthcare insurance companies or hospital systems to reimburse Project Angel Heart to provide medically tailored meals as a solution. So I guess the interesting thing about me, and don't throw things at me until you hear me out, but I used to be a pharmaceutical rep. And, you know, just not the job for me, just didn't speak to me very much. What's interesting about that is while I had that great paying, great benefit type job, it was the unhealthiest I've ever been in my life, both mentally and physically, 40 pounds heavier than I am now. And I went through this sort of health journey, worked with some coaches on nutrition and mindfulness. And I was like, why are we not talking about this stuff in the healthcare space? So it's just become this like passion of mine to integrate nutrition and other modalities into healthcare because it will it will save our system and save a lot of individuals. So that's why I'm here today. Thank you.
I'm Ellie Agar with Hunger Free Colorado, and obviously our work is kind of from the community level to policy to social change and making sure that we're addressing hunger, and we're also helping Coloradans have access to nutritious food. So obviously the Blueprint fits in really well with our work, so I'm excited to be here and be supporting this. I grew up in rural Ohio, grew up on a farm, family still runs it, so I have definitely roots in that part of it. When I came to Denver, I started with a direct service hunger organization, and so I was working directly with families, people who are on SNAP benefits, and now obviously I get to work more on the advocacy, social change level. So I'm really excited to bring kind of the perspective from all of those, of the personal experience to knowing the families firsthand to being able to see what that long-term change can do. So,
Great, thank you.
I'm Kevin Warner. I'm with Trailhead Institute. We're kind of helping coordinate all these meetings. So if you have any needs with food or beverages that we provide or anything at your table, please feel free to let me know. I guess what you know about me is that I admittedly didn't know much about the hunger issues in Colorado before joining this project, but by participating in the 4 work groups and the governing council, I've learned a tremendous amount, and we've got a really impressive group of people together. So thanks for joining us.
I'm Khadijah Haynes, and I'm a consultant working on the project. And what I want you to know most about me today, this is a learning moment for all of you, that when you wear a cowboy hat and you take it off, you never, ever face it down, ever. You will be scorned, and people will understand that you are from the city. So you leave your hat up at all times, and this is the most wonderful time of the year for me, Stock Show. I live for Stock Show, I love Stock Show, and that's what I want you to know about me today.
Hi, everyone. I am Courtney Fultnier. I work with Kevin at Trailhead Institute. I'm really just planning the logistics for this, and just to kind of echo Kevin's sentiments, we at Trailhead are so excited to be involved in this project, and I think that it's been a really eye-opening experience to us to really kind of be part of that public sense in terms of, I guess that is really kind of great for this group, letting the public know how big of an issue this actually is. And I feel like we can definitely feel that at Trailhead as we progress through that work. And one thing to know about me is I do have an announcement to make today. I am making a life change and moving to Portland, Oregon at the end of the month. So this will be my last meeting with you. But thank you guys so much for allowing me to be a part of this. And I wish you all the best moving forward in your work.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Banyan. I've been the primary strategic consultant for the Blueprint. I brought the project to the Health Foundation in late 2016 and helped tee it up and lead the project and write the Blueprint. Really excited to be here. I think this is probably the greatest honor and privilege of my career, is working on this and really engaging folks around the state and different stakeholders who haven't been involved in hunger and its impacts in the work that they do, and speaking around the state about the Blueprint. It's just been continued to be a great learning experience for me, and I'm really happy to be here to support the work groups and ongoing work. Obviously, about me, I'm super passionate about this issue. I've been fortunate enough to work in government and nonprofits and with foundations on systems change. So it's really kind of my sweet spot. So I feel really, really lucky about that. The other thing you should know is that I am absolutely in love with my dog. And if I ever present, you'll see her on the screensaver, and probably your heart will melt as well. But I'm super happy to be here and happy to see some really familiar faces.
Hi, I'm Michelle Ames, and I provide communication support for the Blueprint and have since before the blueprint was actually drafted. The business matter that I want to make sure you are aware of is that part of my role is to provide any kind of communication support you might need for talking about the blueprint, content you might need, graphics you might need, anything like that you might need. So I've interacted with some of you, and we've gotten some really great work going over it. For example, CDE, trying to put some information about the blueprint into the newsletters and things that they do. And so if there's any way that I can help facilitate that for you, make it easier, make it plug and play for you, please, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I will immediately jump on that and get you what you need. The other thing that I will tell you about me today is that I'm really anxious to get back home because this is wet snow, and we so rarely have wet snow, and I've got snowmen and snow forts to build. If people just keep falling, my kids and I are really excited. We have our snow pants right by the door. It's just a matter of getting enough of it to do something.
So I'm gonna ask Khaleesi if she's ready to opt in here before I pass it along around the circle.
Yeah, sorry for the delay. I had to unmute my audio. Wow, I hear an echo. That's interesting. So my name is Khaleesi Vincent. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I am a consultant and work with Khadijah. And what you need to know about me is that I am absolutely thoroughly pissed off that in 2019 in America that this group has to exist.
Yeah, all right. Thank you, Khaleesi. All right, moving on.
My name is Vinny Cervantes, and I guess my main hat is Denver Alliance for Street Health Response. And so we're kind of a coalition of different groups that are working on basically alternatives to safety and responses to crisis and conflict in our community. So it includes a lot of different groups, including Servicios de la Raza, which connected me to this effort. But I've also been involved in campus organizing in Auraria around food scarcity and housing scarcity issues. And I'm also the co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, which would obviously support something like this. I guess the thing that I would love for you all to know about me is that a lot of my efforts, whether they're involved in criminal justice organizing or homelessness or hunger or anything that I've been involved with, I think kind of is informed by the fact that I think that whether we like it or not, the issues of housing and education and food and work will drastically change over the next 5 to 10 years. And I think where there's opportunity in that is making those things more equitable and just. And so I'm really excited to expand, especially our concept of safety and wellness around just meeting people's basic needs, and in this case, hunger. So that's me.
Hi, my name is Abigail Kessner. I am the communications director in the division of CDPHE that oversees the WIC program, but we oversee a lot of other programs. And so I've seen in my work really the impact that hunger has on a lot of different health outcomes. And the thing I probably want to share about myself is just a passion I have for behavior change communications. And as we think about this work, I'm really excited at the opportunity to not only think about how we can get people to start thinking about hunger differently at a community level, but how we can also impact individual behavior change too. So I think I'm really excited to see how that fits in this work.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Dara Hesse. I'm a senior program officer with the Colorado Health Foundation. And I oversee our food access and security priority area on the philanthropy team, but partner very closely with Alexis Waitman, who was deeply involved in the development of the blueprint. So a couple of things. One, it's so fun and great to get to know you all. However, this is probably the last time you're going to see me because we are sort of dividing up these work groups who's going to participate from our organization, and someone from our communications team is actually going to sit on this, but was not available today, so I'm filling in. I'm actually going to be participating on work group 2-3 that's more community focused, as well as work group 5 focused on child nutrition programs. My other area of focus here at the foundation is healthy schools, so that's why I'm in number 5. And for 2-3, we are going to be launching a funding opportunity focused on strengthening community food systems. You'll see an announcement for that in the coming weeks, so excited about that. And then my final fun fact is that Bob and I used to work together, and when I first started 5.5 years ago, I was assigned to him, and he was my onboarding buddy, so, yeah. Hi, Bob. It's been a long time.
Denver's a small town.
Small world, but I wouldn't want to taint it.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Max. I work at CDHS. I manage 2 programs, the SNAP Education Program, which is a nutrition ed program offered for SNAP recipients or SNAP eligibles. I also run and oversee the SNAP Outreach Program. So that's the application assistance for SNAP as well. So I think a fun fact about me is that I was actually raised in New Orleans, which I identify very strongly with. And a day like today, I remember creating my first snowman in New Orleans, and it was this big, and then with 1 hour, it had fallen over like face first because we had gotten just enough snow to build a snowman. So I think that's it.
Hey, everyone. My name is Maddie Philly. I work at the American Heart Association, and we are really excited to be integrating a lot more of our work at the community level instead of, I feel like in the past, some of it has been at more of a funding level and research base. So I'm really excited to have the chance to work on a lot of different aspects of food access. My background is really in corporate wellness, and so I'm excited to bring that perspective of the employees, because a lot of the time I found that when we think of people who are employed, or at least in the corporate wellness world, it's like everyone has enough money to feed themselves, which is not the case at all. And I think there's a huge opportunity to integrate this into that aspect. And something to know about me, I love skiing. I've skied since I was like 5, which isn't shocking for anyone in Colorado. Well, a lot of people in Colorado. But I I'm really excited to be going this weekend, but I am also really excited I've been doing more backcountry skiing. So if anyone likes that, always looking for smart, safe partners who know about avalanche safety. Very important.
Great, thank you.
Hi, I'm Austin Luce. I'm an executive director for Consumption Literacy Project, and our work really focuses around recapturing food waste and creating compost for gardens is a big project that we're doing in Montbello right now. And let's see, something about me, I love to climb trees, metaphorically and literally. And I feel like that's a big piece of my life, is always getting on the next branch, the next branch. And if you've ever been to the very top of a tree, it's a really cool feeling. Good morning.
Well, thank you all for taking the time to do that. I think it's important as we continue our work together to have a sense of who all is here. Oh, yep, thanks.
Okay, so we will move into a few updates this morning. We wanted to share a little bit with you about some of the other work groups and the governing council, just briefly to bring you up to speed. Just as a reminder, and we talked about this at the last meeting, and I'll mention it again today, is that the meeting notes from every work group meeting and the governing council are available on the website for everyone all the time. So if you are interested in digging a little bit deeper into what some of the other groups are talking about or looking at, all that is available to you at any time, and you can check that out. I think, and I'll welcome input from some of the other folks who sat in on all of our round 1 work group conversations, but it's, as expected, probably each of the work groups has a little bit of a different personality, and some of the goals and strategies are a little bit closer in for some of the groups, and some of them are a little bit more nebulous. And so it's been interesting to work through sort of what that looks like and feels like with the different groups. Some are larger than others, some have broader representation, some are, different. So it's been a really wonderful process, and you are welcome to attend as many of those as you would like to, and the notes are available for those of you who want to keep up with what is all happening. The Governing Council had their first meeting at the end of December. So the folks who are providing oversight for this project and have the responsibility for some of the decision-making have gotten together. Really great productive meeting, and are moving things forward. Just as a reminder, those folks initially are seated for a 1-year term. We're going to be having conversations with them at our next couple of meetings about which folks will stay and which folks will rotate, because we really want to be able to create some leadership opportunities for lots of different folks throughout the 5 years of the Blueprint. Some of the priorities that are sort of close in for the Governing Council, just as sort of information for you all, selecting the implementation director, and we're going to talk a little bit about that here in a minute, sort of figuring out the terms and sort of the bench and the pipeline for future leadership for that group, thinking about the overall evaluation framework for the Blueprint, and we're going to dig in a little bit on that for this work group today, as well as some of the cross-work group communication and how we're going to ensure that things that surface in one place that surface in another place are coordinated and connected, and trying to think through what the best kind of processes are for that. So that's some of the work that that group is doing. And then the work groups, you know, are doing similar kinds of processes to what we have going on here. Are there any questions about work group updates or Governing Council information that I can share, or interests that you all want to know? Okay, good. Then we'll move on. Because the next piece is really exciting. I think those of us who've been working on this for a while are thrilled about this, and I hope you all will be too. We have in your packet, and is going to be shared electronically today, information about the implementation director position. So this is one of a number of people who will, so that's in the little packet, I think, at everybody's seat.
Oh, this is mine that I brought.
Okay, so you don't get to have it? No, I'm just kidding. You can have mine, because I've spent a lot of time with it, so I'm good. Does anybody else need a copy of the implementation director? And Halisa, you'll get this via email later today. We're really going to do our best to share this broadly. So you'll see a couple of pieces with that. One is sort of a one-page sort of ad, sort of a bigger picture view of the position, and then there are some pages to follow that really have some of the detailed responsibilities and some of the things we're hoping for in a successful candidate. This, like I said, is going live today. We hope to get a good number of responses by February 22nd. As you know, having done many job searches yourselves, I believe that we are going to try to encourage folks who are really interested to get us information by the 22nd. We hope that we will find the best candidate through that. If that doesn't happen, we will reopen until we find the right person for this role. But we hope that you will share this information broadly with your networks when you get the electronic versions of this. I think this is a really exciting, interesting job, and I think it's great. So I hope you will help us spread the word so we can find someone who's really a super fit for this. As I said, this is one of a number of folks who will be supporting the Blueprint project. So this person is not going to be, like, we are not all going to go away when this person gets hired. So just some assurity on that, that this is going to be the person who really leads the implementation of this piece.
Timeline on this hire, or is it just full-time exempt position with non-contracted, or what's the?
Yeah, so it's full-time. Well, maybe you want to answer that, Courtney. You probably better.
Yeah, so it'll be full-time, and then it's a 5-year contract.
Okay.
5 years of Blueprint, yeah.
It does have, so the person will be an employee of the Trailhead Institute, and so we'll have their payroll and their benefits and all those pieces come through Trailhead, but this project will be all that they do. This will be their focus.
Yeah, and just to add clarity to that too, they will be overseen by the Governing Council. That will be considered, a member of the Governing Council will be considered their supervisor.
Great. So if after you have read through that, if you have questions, you're welcome to reach out to any of us. But again, we hope once you get that electronic version, and it will be posted on a number of different job recruitment sites as well, that you will help us identify some great folks for this position. The other piece I want to just touch on briefly here before we move forward, we had talked last time about establishing some leadership for each work group. One of the items we had discussed at the last meeting was, what would that look like? So if I was going to self-nominate to be the chair or the co-chair of work group number 1, what would that mean? So we have sent out, and you have a copy of it here this morning, just a little bit more about what we understand is the expectations and time commitment for that role as we know it today. We're really looking for someone to be a thought partner with the implementation director to think about the agendas, how we best move the work forward, a little bit of a debrief after meetings to see, you know, the trends or themes or things we need to really pay attention to. We expect that this would probably be an additional maybe 2 hours a month on top of the 2 hours that you would spend at this meeting. So we hope that it's not a onerous time commitment, but we want to be realistic that it would be in addition to the time that you would spend at this work group meeting. How we're thinking about selecting folks, a person or persons for this role, in a number of conversations, folks said a co-chair role might be more appealing to them, and we are certainly open to that. So we wanted to share this description with you today. Encourage you, if you are interested, we've had some folks raise their hands already, but we're looking for, if you're interested in self-nominating, that you email endhunger@trailhead.institute and let us know that you are interested in that role. And then at the February, I keep trying to like jump ahead to March, it's February, it's only January, Cindy, so February meeting, then we would bring to all of you, the folks who had self-nominated, we would ask those folks to just say why they were interested in that role, and then we'll have this group make that selection for the work group chair and or co-chairs, as it may turn out. You're also welcome to nominate someone else if you would like to, but if you choose to do that, please let that person know that you're nominating them so it isn't a surprise to them at the February meeting that they have been nominated, but we're open to that as well. So just wanted to give you a little bit more clarity around that, share what we're thinking about process, and then I will open up other questions or other pieces of information, anything else you need in terms of thinking about whether or not this role could be for you. And we hope you will step up. This, I think, is a great opportunity to really influence the direction of this group and be more involved in some of the different pieces for this work group specifically. So,
just as a point of order, do we have like a decision-making process, like consensus, or is it majority?
So at the last meeting, we talked a little bit about that. And for most decisions, what we would like to do is have consensus. We don't know how many folks will be interested in opting in to this sort of position. And so once we have a better idea about that and can have a discussion in February and have each person say, this is sort of what I'm, you know, this is why I would like to be considered to this. I would love it if we can come to a group consensus decision, but for something like this, we may need to resort to an anonymous vote. Like if we've got 5 people, it might be a little bit more complicated to try to do consensus. But we will see how that comes together. Yeah. Anything else on the leadership piece? Okay, fantastic. So I think we're through kind of updates that we had to share there. Were there any other outstanding questions from the last meeting or anything before we kind of move into our priority work this morning? Just want to give space if there's anything else that has come up for you in between meetings. Oh, sorry, I do have one other thing. So we had talked about at the last meeting, working to gather information on sort of what was happening and the pieces that are already in place. So Trailhead folks had sent out an electronic form for folks to fill out and provide us with information on what is happening. You have a brief 4-page document in your packet this morning that says Work Group 1 Assets. We are hoping that more folks will contribute to this. We only had, I think, what did you say, Courtney, 4 people fill this out, and this was a request, I think, almost unanimously from the group, was what are other people doing that we need to know about and understand for this? So you can see on this sheet the kinds of questions that we asked, and Courtney is pulling up the form here on the shared screen so folks can take a look at that. We really would love for folks to opt in and share information. We've had some questions about what kind of information would we put here? We want you to put everything here. You know, like we don't necessarily need you to filter like, is this important or is it not? We actually just want folks to be contributing to this so we know and can share with everyone what is what is happening and what's available. So we wanted to be responsive to the requests from last time about what other work is happening. This is what we have so far. So we'd love to have more because we know there's more happening, and I think it would be helpful as we continue our conversations to really understand the breadth of that work that we can gather from this group. There are other places that we can contribute to this and add what we know about, but we really are hoping that you will help us build this out. So yay, here's the little form up here. So for those of you who hadn't had a chance to go in and see it, this is what it looks like. So would love for you to contribute what you can to this so it can be as robust as we can make it. So I know in our follow-up that we'll send this out again and hope that you will, if you haven't already, that you will opt in and share information from your group or even other folks that you know are doing things as well. So wanted to, sorry, it's my last update. Wanted to follow up on that from our initial meeting.
Yeah, and Cindy, if I can just
Yes.
add to that too, thank you. So you don't have to provide a ton of detail in these individual questions because you'll see at the bottom that we do have spaces where you can just provide a link to a different website or actually upload a resource. So don't feel like you need to put a ton of work into this. We can kind of do that on the back end. We want to make this as less time consuming as possible. So, yep.
And all the questions are optional too, so if you feel like one to simplify, feel free to skip it.
Yeah. Great.
Thanks. Was there a question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Debating if I need to hit my button. So if we have multiple activities, you want us to fill it out for each one individually, correct? Like don't put it all in one form?
Yeah, or you could just put them all in one form and we can divide it out on the back end, and that's fine too.
Yeah, I think that's a great question because I think some, some folks will have just several programs or several different initiatives that we just want to try to capture in whatever way is easiest for you.
Yeah.
And we can then work on it once we have all the data in to figure out what the best way to.
Yeah, information, so, there's probably 15 initiatives that I know of. Do you want me to go in and, okay.
Yep, I do. More is better at this point. Yep, right, like we're trying to get a real sense of the scope and scale of things that are happening and so we can figure out where the gaps are. And like, I don't know everything that's going on, so like, it's helpful, I think, for folks to see that perspective. So yes, but like, don't filter, I guess is my point. Like, throw it all into the form.
Sorry to make you do that. Can you please just repeat the overall goal of collecting this info? What is the material you're exactly trying to collect?
So at our first meeting, and not only in this work group, in all of the work groups, folks said, well, what's going on? We don't want to duplicate things that are happening, or we want to build on stuff that's moving forward. So the goal with this is to try to capture as much information about what's happening in hunger alleviation in the state. So we have a sense of what's going on so that we can partner, build on, connect to, bring together the different pieces that are already in place.
Okay, so it's not just about this work group, the things that we know contribute to this work group's goal.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry that wasn't clear.
No.
Yes, we are, we have 5 goals, as you know, and we're going to have some policy pieces. And so this is a big area of work. So as I said, like don't filter, right? Like if you know of something that's related to this, we want to know about it. And we're going to get all this information back to you all, right? As you think about this work and the work of your organizations, so that you have that data as well. So that if there are connections or synergies or things we need to build on or think about, we're trying to get as much information as we can. Yeah.
That question is specific to the first goal, though. You said it was not work group specific, or there are some for each work group. There's one for each. Okay. Work groups.
Okay.
Okay. So
I think that's why I got.
Yeah. So sorry. I guess I'm thinking like we need to know it all. And
well, I think for me, like, the question, like LiveWell isn't on here, but they do a lot of information sharing on some of the other goals. And so making sure that we understand that there are assets that this group could tap into for the content goals that you may want to achieve in your communications or could reach a large audience. They may not be engaged in this, but if they're written on the asset map, they can be in the future around fresh food access, or they don't do SNAP enrollment, but they do public education. So there's a lot of those different smaller organizations and larger that aren't on this work group, but we should be aware of them as resources.
And so if it isn't necessarily just this work group, you might just say, note, this would be more applicable in work group 2. But again, I think the goal of this is to really try to capture the whole of it, as much as we can, right? We know we're never going to get everything. And at some point, we're going to have to just be like, and we're moving forward. But this is our attempt to respond and get information and make sure that we're coordinating as much as we can. Okay, so we're going to move on then, barring anything else. So at the last meeting, we had done a brief activity to try to figure out where there was some interest and energy and enthusiasm behind the priorities and strategies that had been set out for work group 1. This is not to say that these are the only things this work group will ever touch on, but these rose to the top pretty quickly in this group, and were very, the votes were pretty solid in these 3 places. So they were promote community-driven practices to understand barriers to and increasing support, ensure that economic and health impacts of hunger and food access are integrated into community development, and to develop evidence-based marketing campaigns and education initiatives. So for today, and again, it's not that we are not ever going to talk about anything else, but today we are going to think about these 3 priorities that were identified by this group at our previous meeting. And what I would love for you to do is, we have a worksheet in your packet. It's probably toward the back, that has goals, tactics and action steps, work group member content. Yeah, look, there it is. Fantastic. And we hope that this can be our guide. One of the other themes that came up in this work group and in all work groups is, how are we going to know if we're successful, right? What is it we're all working toward? What are we all pulling toward together? And that's some of the work we're going to have a conversation about today. So what I would like to offer is for us to take 7 to 10 minutes individually to think about a couple of those priorities. You've got room for 2 on your sheet. You can just focus on one if that's really your passion, or if you would like to do a couple of them, you're welcome to do that. To really think and just work through on your own, if we were really successful in ensuring that economic development and health impacts of hunger were integrated into community development, what would that look like? What would the success measure look like for that? And jot down some notes. And then work through that down the sheet for that priority, just sort of on your own, in your own thinking. And then we're going to break into groups for each of these and have a facilitator and capture the notes and really try to come to, as much as we can today, some consensus around these would be some success measures, and these might be some action steps we would take to work toward those. And then at the, before we leave, Khadijah's going to walk us through a little exercise so that we can all identify with where we are going to opt in for that. So again, 7 to 10 minutes, feel free to grab some more coffee or a snack. The restrooms are just across the lobby, if that is important for you at this moment. Stand up and stretch if you want, but we're going to give a little bit of individual time before we break into small groups to have these discussions. So the priorities are listed up here. If the worksheet is helpful, please use that. If there's another method that works better for you in thinking about what success measures look like, I welcome you to use that. We wanted to just provide a couple of tools this morning. So 7 to 10 minutes, then we'll break into some smaller groups and get what you need to be comfortable. Oh, no, it's fine. There's oh, yeah, that's better.
For those on the phone, we're going to be emailing the documents to you or attaching it to the meeting invitation one way or the other within the next couple of seconds.
Thank you.
You found it. Because you are here. So maybe take just 1 or 2 more minutes to wrap up your thoughts or grab more coffee or water or whatever you need. We're going to do a little check on sort of which priorities we're thinking about this morning.
Okay.
So, ma'am, welcome. Doing well? We're not in a library, we can talk
Yes.
Everybody's kind of doing individual work and they got quiet.
Okay.
I just didn't turn my music, my background music on, so.
get just a quick, maybe we'll wait till Leslie pops back in. Just one more second, Abigail. Sorry. Just get to stand up. Stand up, stand up. I was just thinking, hard work. Maybe you need to sit down, that's totally fine. I just, sometimes we get a lot more than we need to. Thank you. I find myself. I wanted to get a sense of, and priority one is actually a little bit longer, it got cut off, but I think, I'll just read it, but I think we inferred it having done some of this work. So promote community-driven practices to understand barriers to and increase support for accessing food programs, implementing systems change, and reducing stigma. So that was sort of the end of that first one. So how many folks wrote out some thoughts on that first one? So promoting the community-driven practices. Please, so I can get a sense of your mind.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. How many did number 2? So ensuring economic health impacts of hunger. Okay, so 5, 4. How about the third one, the marketing campaigns? Excellent. So here's what I propose, and I'm welcome. I'll propose 2 things, and you guys can decide how we want to do this morning. So it sounds like there's the most energy around 1 and 3, not that 2 isn't in there, and we can certainly do all 3 if we want to. How I had originally envisioned this going was that we would break up into the 3 priority groups. You would share what was on your sheet. We would take some notes. Given the size of the group, I want to make sure we have enough folks for meaty discussion and being able to engage everyone. So we can do this a couple of ways. We can do that. We can break into 3 groups and have folks share out and provide information and switch around. We can stay as we are as a group and work through these together. We could break into 2 groups and do 2 of them. So let's look at the first 2 options. So breaking into small groups and having you share your discussion and see where we can come to on the goals, or staying in a large group and working for, let's say, 15 minutes through 1 priority and then moving to the second priority. Okay, so option 1 is small groups. Option 2 is whole group. So who would like to do small group discussions this morning? Now you can vote if you want to vote. Okay. Who would like to stay within the large group and move through the priorities? Okay. Are you comfortable with it? Can you live with that?
I'm
okay.
pretty
Thank you.
neutral.
Okay. Thank you. I'd like to double check, so thank you for that. So thank you. And we've got just under an hour to move through this, depending on how it all comes together. Okay. Would one of our team mind capturing notes on the sticky notes, the big boards for me up here, just so folks can see sort of what we're talking about? And I'm sorry, Halisi, that you won't probably, well, maybe we can position that in front of the camera in a way that you can see it.
We can change it.
Yeah, maybe we can move it.
Switch videos.
Okay, perfect. Let's do that. Let's do that. And then we can see sort of how we're tracking that, which is great. Perfect. Let's do that. What a great idea. Thank you. Problem solved. Perfect. This is why working in a team is better than working by yourself. Okay, perfect. So we will capture notes on this. So the first one was promoting community-driven practices to understand barriers and increase support for accessing food programs, systems change, and stigma. So I'm going to stop talking and open it up to the group to share what kinds of measurements of success you thought about. And we're really going to do our best to stay in this goal space for now. So we're not gonna, everybody wants to move to tactics because we all want to do the work, and I get that. But I really want us to establish a little bit of clarity as we can this morning around what success will look like so that we can have a collective vision and a goal of where we want to go. It can be a couple of things, but so please share what you wrote down, and we're going to try to capture that, some of it up here. And please remember to mic up when it's you.
Can I interject a comment? So for those of you who are on the work group, those of us who are staff and consultants are going to be being quiet. We've invited you here to do the work, so we don't feel like we're not raising our hands, but we're going to be silent and hear what you're suggesting. Thank you.
Okay. What you got?
I felt like mine kind of leveraged between,
Thank you, just for,
I felt like mine kind of bordered both priority 1 and 2. I said success would look like multiple integrated collaborations from very diverse perspectives in the community, not just diverse people, but diverse work. You know what I mean? Like I think something as big as what you're talking about with this priority and the second one would warrant like multiple different kinds of work that are coming together that can't be done all by one person.
right, thank you. Yeah, and I think that's measurable, right? So how many different groups are, I mean, we can figure out sort of some, thank you.
So one big collaboration with multiple people. Kind of.
Great. What else do we have?
I think a really clear understanding of stigma directly from those that could benefit from food assistance but haven't elected to use it or sporadically use it. I think there's a consumer focus group, or I think we need to hear directly from the folks that are struggling with hunger.
Do you think that's an action that we need to take, or do you think that's a goal, or how?
I think the goal is that we have an understanding of that perspective.
Thank you.
Can I ask for further clarity? When you say we,
Yeah.
who is the we understands more?
Well, our work group.
The work group.
Yes, which then can filter to the other work groups as well as needed.
So that's an internal facing goal, and it's not intended to be the rest of the world out there.
Correct. Because
Okay.
I think without that, it's going to be hard to accomplish other goals.
Okay, thank you.
In my mind.
Yeah, right.
Actually, I kind of feel like that overlaps with almost all of these on here, because I had very similar thoughts. So I feel like that's kind of just a general thing we have to do to be successful in these work group goals.
And I would say even in reducing stigma, we first have to also know like what's the cause of that stigma, almost like what's behind it. So before we can say how we actually reduce it, right? So I don't know if that's a goal or if, so better understanding is one thing and then reduction is another, but I'd say both of those things are important.
And again, this is promoting community-driven practices to do all of those things. I think as we get to the marketing campaign one, and we can certainly cross back and forth, I think we'll want to figure out what around this stigma piece we want to be a goal. I think that's part of what we want to sort of puzzle through today. So I'll just put that out there as well.
I also, under some of my tactic areas, I talked about having these councils and focus groups or figuring that out. And so kind of as a goal or measure of success, I had talked about maybe if we had a goal around like a number of community ambassadors or target areas of the state, if we looked at enrollment post doing these initiatives, that would help us understand if we actually reduce stigma, if we actually saw enrollment go up in areas that we targeted.
Okay. So identifying some key areas and a number of community folks who were moving this forward.
Along that, potentially, the usage of food insecurity screenings. So I know Children's and Anschutz have really taken a big initiative in Kaiser to do more food insecurity screening. So potentially in areas where, you know, we're piloting, we could measure who's utilizing them, what percentage, if that's increasing, things like that.
And how does that relate to sort of the community-driven practice? Because again, I think that one of the key pieces of this particular priority is promoting that community-driven piece, and I don't know,
Yeah.
putting this out there, right? Like how communities would feel about with children, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if there's a disconnect or not, but I want to be sure we don't drop that community-driven piece of this, because I feel like when this was developed, that was the key piece of this particular strategy.
I see those institutions as anchor institutions within the community. So they have influence in that community, they have connections in the community. So maybe it's not a children's, but who, you know, whomever those anchor institutions are, and the community might have a good sense of whether they can screen.
And, okay, so would it be an increased number of, I'm trying to get like to the goal, right? Because I'm trying to make sure we're discerning between goals and tactics, right? And if implementing more screenings is a tactic to get us to, right? Like, we're trying to just make sure we're clear about where we are.
I think the purpose of the screenings is not only to understand the population, but then to make referrals out to those community-specific partners and organizations. So I think that could maybe be the goal, like increasing utilization or impact of community initiatives. I don't know what the word would be, but I'm saying like the screenings, I don't think are the actual like the goal of the screenings isn't just to do screenings. I don't think it's to actually then be able to give them support. So I think that would be the goal of promoting them through screenings, maybe. But that again would be a tactic, wouldn't it?
Right. So
Yeah.
so thank you. And like, again, I don't want to lose that community-driven piece. And again, I get that some of this is going to overlap, but like, is it the community members who are implementing those food insecurity screenings because they're going to have better access to actually get it? Like, that's and like, what's the goal, and do we need to move the screening piece down to this action step?
Yeah, I think I just want to chime in. You know, the overarching goal in the blueprint is to promote public and political understanding and will building. And then, you know, part of that then is how do we look at the community and what's happening to then drive public and political will so that we can end hunger. So just trying to keep that frame, that larger frame of what we're trying to achieve on educating the public, creating the will to end hunger, and what does that then look like with these kind of sub goals?
Yeah, thank you. Because goal 4 and 5, like 4 is focused on enrollment, right? So they will do some of this, and not that we can't have some of those discussions, right? They're going to be focused on enrollment for SNAP and WIC, right? Goal 5 is school, you know, child nutrition programs, right? And increasing engagement in that. So thank you, Jennifer. This one is about public and political will building. So again, it's like so of that, then the subsect was community-driven practices to understand and increase support. I know those two overlap, right? And there isn't a clear delineation. And the framework for this one is really that political will building. Sorry.
You know what, I needed to know that overview that Jennifer just gave, just so I can figure out how to chime in.
Great. Thank you. Super helpful.
But also, I wanted clarity on, so you said building public will, and is that also providing the education first? Because I'm trying to figure out what this community-driven practice is that you're looking for.
Yeah, I think I can answer some of that. So, you know, again, I've had the opportunity to present the blueprint to different stakeholders across the state. And every time I do, and I bring the impacts, the positive impacts to health and well-being, community vitality, family security, we have allies. And part of it is the education piece. When I talk to people about 1 in 4 Coloradans being on Medicaid and 640,000 Coloradans being hungry every day, it's really shocking. And when people hear that, they want to be part of the solution. So part of it is being able to provide that information and then understanding what the community sees is that the reason that might be happening in their communities, and then to bring that forward. And, you know, I do have some tactics that I can talk about. I don't want to hog the floor, but what I would say is, there are things that we know work. There is research on what is happening across the state with consumer experience for SNAP. We have some SNAP forums that have been written up. We have the WIC data, and we have national research on stigma and what that looks like. And we're not very different from the rest of the country. So part of it, to me, is how do we get into the communities and get into more access points to be talking about what hunger looks like, and then have those allies want to solve it with us.
I think the community-driven practices piece of this was that the state institutions alone are not going to be able to do this, right? We who work for nonprofit institutions alone are not going to be able to do this. So what's the community engagement piece? How do we think about community-driven work to help build public will and education and understanding? And that's I think, was the crux of this piece of lying under this public school, right? Is that community engagement piece is going to be important to getting us to where we want to go.
I think a key goal would be identifying some of the main populations in need and identifying their means of, I am bad at delineating tactics and goals, but I think identifying the methods that they use. So a lot of communities use like promotora models, but others are going to more use maybe I don't know if it's a homeowners association. I don't know, but I'm saying like identifying their means of communication. So it would be identifying a certain number of communities that we're really focusing on, so we can dive into those to make it a tangible and quantitative, something we can actually evaluate.
So I think the goal might be that communities interested in engaging in this work have the tools and resources they need to increase education, and then what you just said, okay, to get there is how I would see that playing out, potentially. Does that make sense?
Cindy, can you say that again? Sorry.
I will do my best. So communities that want to engage in this work have the tools and resources they need to increase education around hunger. And we can work something like, so resources are available for communities that want to use them. And once we get down to tactics, right, we're gonna have to figure out like the depth and breadth of what that needs to look like, right? Because remember, it's gonna look different than it's gonna look in rifle. So when we get there, we can do some of those other pieces. But I think as I think about goals, that makes more of a goal statement to me, that we could say we have this resource and toolkit available and folks can engage. So it's free, it's at what you level up.
Increasing education around hunger, but also the food programs, right? So it's not just the hunger, but like accessing the programs.
Well, yes, and this is where the interesting overlap happens, right? Because group 4 is really thinking about these access piece. So I think we're hoping to just get folks to understand that hunger is a thing.
So
right? So many people are affected.
Promote community-driven practices to understand barriers to and increase support for accessing food programs, implementing system change, and reducing stigma.
Yes. So there is some inherent overlap, which is great. So.
Yeah, I think with every one of these, there's a micro and a macro issue. So, we have the systems change and institutions and cornerstone agencies and folks who have a lot of cachet in the community. And then there's the elevating of the voices around, does the community even understand the lack of access or what's even available? And I think, Michelle's done some great jobs of having like a plug and play, so that we can bring in the Feeding Colorado or Feeding America data on each county, and then the Hunger Free data on the EB&E and the WIC data on the EB&E. But that's not necessarily reaching the right audience, and it also is not telling us what the real life experience is happening on the ground. And there are some tools that we could expand and utilize that would bring that information front and center.
I guess I think that's where I'm getting confused is it says the priority is promoting community-driven practices, and what I'm hearing a lot of is like, we're trying to find a way to get our information to the community. So for me, it sounds more like we're getting the community to promote our data or the data that we have. And so I'm confused about the channel and like the actual movement of that channel. Like, is it more we are promoting the community versus like the community is promoting our work. And I think that needs to be clarified somewhere in the goal, because I think that's where I'm personally getting confused on like what exactly this priority is.
I'm just going to jump in again, and I apologize. I agree that there's these two pieces, and when I was thinking about action steps, I think there are avenues that we need to, that are best practices and that do exist but haven't been expanded. So using more feedback loops with communities and surveys to capture the experiences and insight for folks, both that are working in the community with individuals experiencing hunger and then folks that are experiencing hunger. And then secondly, there is a really interesting platform called Be Heard Mile High that looks at community. It's a survey platform with community panels. So it's the ability to recruit individual community members that can then provide their direct input on a short survey. And, you know, we're piloting that with, it's a Center for African American Health that has this platform with food insecurity, but it can be expanded to other communities, and that's kind of the goal. So for me, one of the tactics and action steps would be, you know, what surveys are already working, you know, whether that's food pantry surveys, surveys with folks who are working on the ground, the promotorists, the outreach and enrollment specialists, folks working in the food bank, but then also in the larger community, how do we use these community panel models to get that direct impact and input that then could be pushed into that public and political will building. So you're right, there is kind of the dual, the parallel process piece that's happening.
So I think it would be interesting to try to think about what a goal would be around elevating what communities know and would be looking for in terms of support in this issue, alongside, you know, the two-way street, right? So there are some things that are out there, and we have some information, we know to be effective, and what else is that we need to be developed, right? I think both, try to help with clarity.
Yeah. Yeah, so that helps a lot, I think, but also I think it might need to be clarified, promote community-driven practices to do what, like what we have what we want to do with it, but like what specific community practices are we identifying? Community practices to engage their community, or community practices to end hunger, like what those practices are, because we have, again, like what we're trying to do with it, to understand barriers, increase support, you know, but like what, I don't know if I made that clear enough.
Yeah. I think the word practice is kind of getting me. Yeah, because what is the practice? I know that we're trying to obtain information, but I'm just stuck on that. What is the practice?
Would it be initiatives, maybe community-driven initiatives that help to understand the barriers? And again, you know, that captures like the two-way street piece rather than like because practices does connotate like tactics or a framework that is smaller than an initiative.
So I'm a little bit concerned, so. Yep. Okay, and it's different from what we've published, and so I don't want to go back and wordsmith the blueprint. I appreciate where you're coming from, absolutely. I'm wondering if we can have an internal understanding that practices is maybe a little, I worry a little bit about wordsmithing the priority. I guess I'd like to figure out maybe in the goal statements how we provide some more clarity around that, or come to an
maybe we can define practice for how you were just describing initiative. But it's not, because I have the same feeling that practice to me feels like a sort of a social practice, something you do.
Something that's already in place and happening, and to me, it sounds like you're trying to gather information. It's not a practice.
In some places, I think that may be true. There may be good work happening in the community that we don't know about that we could build on too. So I don't think we want to think that there isn't something happening in a community that we could access and amplify, right? I mean, you know. Right. So maybe it's. So can we be comfortable with this and have it sort of practices and internally understand it as more initiatives?
I mean, again, I think that should be clarified in goals.
Okay.
And yeah, that's a goal.
Okay, great. So thinking about So I think that the first one, I think, reads as a goal to me. I think the next three are potentially tactics. And then I think the final one could be a goal, but I don't want to lose this thread of how do we understand, or how would we get the community perspective? I'd like to see if we can figure out kind of a goal around that.
Can we
Peter touched on that a little bit, but.
Can we move those into tactics and then maybe try to summarize that into another goal? The three.
Say that again.
I was saying, can we move those into tactics, and now that they're there, can we try to look at them and maybe create one more goal that these tactics would be achieving?
And what would you suggest?
I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. We can come back to this too, because it's never a good idea to feel pressure to set your umbrella. Sometimes you get so far, and we as humans want to put a period on the sentence, but it might be
I'm not sure if anyone can hear me, but I've lost audio. I logged out and logged back in, but I still cannot hear.
Practicing food, implementing systems change, and reducing stigma, but it's really about the community engagement.
Yes, this was really about the community, the individual, the person who's working on hunger in their community that isn't attached to Kaiser or the WIC program or whatever. And we may have captured that in the second goal, which is fine. So if communities have the tools and resources they need to increase, right, so maybe we've done it, and I'm fine with that.
I mean, it might be helpful to think about, like, take like a visioning approach and think, 5 years or 5 years down the road, 5-year blueprint, what does success look like? I mean, if we've achieved our objective for this priority, what does that success look like? What would Colorado look like? And each community.
I'd like to add one more thought here. It's an experience I had right before Christmas that surprised me. And it would be a goal that would be something, what would a measure of success look like? And in my mind, what a measure of success would look like is some way of sharing community-driven solutions for again, getting people to engage with these food programs where they can, and understanding that their community supports them in that, as opposed to stigmatizes them for that. And I think there are some ways that we could share things so that communities could see what other communities have done. And here's my little very quick experience from before the holidays. A mother on the Facebook page for my elementary school made a post that said, I read in the school newsletter that the weekend backpack program, kids participating, has increased by X%, and I am worried about it. And I want to suggest that all of us on this Facebook page who can afford to wipe out all the lunch debt at our school for the holidays. And we did that. Actually, so many people responded that we wiped out all the lunch debt and started a new pot of money to make sure that the lunch debt through the end of the year was going to get wiped out as well. And all it took was one person reading in one newsletter. So I reached out to a mom I knew at 2 other elementary schools around us, and they did the same thing. So I think, and this was purely a communications initiative, right? It was purely here's what we did, here's what the one fact we told everybody, and how that changed the dynamic, and then it created. So to me, if we had some kind of a toolkit with these good ideas that other communities could see and replicate, that to me, that would be a measure of success under this goal, and just helping people think a little bit differently. Because without my experience with this group, I wouldn't have thought to reach out to 2 other moms at 2 other elementary schools. I would have just given my money to our little effort and been quiet about it. But if we could expand that and let other communities see how they can easily do it, all it took was one Facebook post and then a bank account being established at our school. That was really it. So to me, I'd like to add that goal is like some kind of a workable toolbox of communications ideas, again, that apart from how do we get everybody in the state of Colorado to understand that hunger is an issue for too many Coloradans, this is that more micro level of how can we communicate with our fellow community members to engage them in this and both get their engagement in helping to end hunger, and also at the same time express to our community members who are struggling with hunger and with food insecurity that we support them, right? And that they don't have to be ashamed to sign their kid up for help at school with lunches. We're ready to support whatever they need. So to me, that's where we are on this one.
How do folks feel about that? I like your example because it visualizes.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is I think just really visualize just one person sharing the information, like you were saying. We have data out there people don't know anything about. She has a situation at the school. Does anybody know anything about this? I heard, let's help.
Exactly. It just took our principal putting in the newsletter that we need more food contributions for our backpack program because X number more kids are using the backpack program this year, and it just triggered something in another mom, and then it went from there. And I think, again, to promote community-driven practices, this was completely driven by the community. Nobody from the state said, you will contribute, right? I mean, this was totally at the ground level. So for me, that's what this goal is.
So I love that. I think the way it's written here feels a little bit more like an action step, and I'm wondering if the goal is that every community has access to and utilizes a toolkit that can be tailored to meet the unique characteristics of that community, or whatever it might be. But that developing feels like the action step, and the goal is that, it would be available and utilized.
And to add to that, I mean, I think the other thing I'm hearing that it sounds exciting is that not only do communities have access to use what's there, but they also have the access to share those ideas. So it would be the community like you who can say, hey, we've done this. Why don't we do it someplace else too?
Yeah.
So I think
you can measure that, like how often
Yeah.
something is downloaded, or I don't know, whatever it might be.
or upload it.
Or upload it. Yeah.
It actually could be done digitally, and I know I'm digressing, but if you look online to cookbooks and recipes, which I do all the time, you have the recipe, and then you have the little testimonial, I made it for this party, and then you have the picture of the party, and then people underneath, you know, review it. I tried it too. It was fabulous, you know, I give it 4 stars. But that is a way that a community then can come back and engage and then offer their tactics. So as you talk about this being a goal and then action as well, I would hope that this, whatever it is, has a mechanism for communities to put their recipes.
So I want to do a time check and a process check with everyone. So we've got about 20 minutes left. Wrap up. I am happy to stay with this and move on to tactics and action stuff. If folks feel like that is the best use of our time. I'm happy to move on to another priority and start again with the goal conversation. So who would like to stick with this and move on to some of the tactics and action steps and see if those goals are what we need? And the second option would be we move to a different priority. Who would like to?
I just saw is somebody raising their hand up there?
Oh, that was from, she wanted the strategy worksheet, like half an hour ago, yeah. I don't know how to get rid of it, though.
Yeah, it's, I don't know what the group wants to do as far as moving on and going on, but I did want to ask just a little bit of a clarifying question. One, I love this idea of the community toolkit and putting ideas in there, and I was going to add that I think it needs a component so that communities and individuals who have had success can add and build on that toolkit or however that is designed. Because just like this example with the school, we might not know to add that, but if someone comes up with it, to put it in there is going to be critical. But I also, to kind of circle like way back to when we were talking about whether these are purely community members or organizations, I know a lot of the people in the room, and those who don't, do have programs, employees, ambassadors who work very closely in the community. I mean, I think of Live Well, it was brought up earlier, that has, you know, very close ties in the community, medical clinics, regional health connectors, all of these people who I think the community members trust. Where do they fit in if they're not in this priority? If we can't use nonprofit organizations, what priorities do they fit in for doing this education?
So, yes, and I don't think we were saying excluding nonprofits that have some of those connections. I think, and in this group, and we'll have to continue to have this conversation about the line between the institution making the decisions and the people making the decisions, right? So if there's an institution, then let's, right, the folks who are experiencing this and have the direct access and are really trusted leaders in that community being part of the group, that's great. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. I think as I think about really big places that are sort of pushing things down, that feels very different to me than Live Well community ambassadors, right? So I don't think we have to be that black and white about it, would be how I see it. I welcome to this group, right? I don't think it has to be just individuals and just organizations. I think that's a little bit too much of a dichotomy. So I'm sorry if I gave that impression. That was not what I meant at all. I think I was trying to discern between this is the big entity that says we do this, and this is really the conversation that people who are interested in working on this are having, right? And sometimes those are two very different things, and sometimes they're not. So I'm sorry if I didn't mean it to be black and white. Very little of this work in the blueprint is black and white. So if there are places like that where we can include that, that's totally fine.
For me to really move forward with this, I need to define the idea of community. Are we talking about a community as defining a group of people where they live, or defining a group of people according to common interest, or is that a distinction that even needs to be made? Are we trying to do all of the above?
Let's have that discussion. Guys, I mean, you're smart people. Figure that out.
I had one thought, is my first about the collaboration. In my mind, I was kind of seeing that as maybe some community members are a part of that, and maybe also that's also nonprofit people, maybe city, local township people are all a part of those collaborations. But I wonder if we also have another goal that's really rooted in just the people, and it's just a demonstration of active community organizing, like that in communities you have people experiencing hunger that want to do something about it. And how can we help them when they're experiencing hunger, probably experiencing the economic development or the economic issues that come from being hungry and all of the other things? How can we provide resources or tools to just the people to bring them together to be able to speak their mind in a forum like we're doing right now, right? I work out at MLK and I bring food when we go to the garden, when I go there and work to teach those kids how to grow food. And when I bring food, they're like, oh, thank you so much. And then they're trying the spinach and they're so excited about learning how to grow food, right? But I'm just creating a garden for them and they're learning it, and now they get to organize and they're talking to their teachers and want to do more, right? So I just provided a little resource to bring them together. Can we do that? Can we say that there's a goal that we're providing some kind of community organizing support to really gel the people in the community together so that they are heard and not told, you know, like it's not being placed on them?
And I think that was my thought with like focus groups and learning, and that's all tactical, but I feel uncomfortable saying our goal is to provide a toolkit without saying we have a full understanding of what the communities even need, want, what's going on, things like that. So, I'm thinking of an example of there's a farm co-op that certain community members didn't want to access because they felt politically they had different ideals than those sorts of things that are intricacies in each community that I fear that if we don't have a goal in understanding, we're gonna go right to, here's your toolkit.
Well, I would say those things can live parallel, right? So I would say we could think about working on something like what Michelle has described, and we may need, right? So I think they can live together, right? A little bit of dissonance, right? But we can try to figure that out. Yeah.
We might qualify it by saying a framework, so that we can create a framework and then communities can build their toolkit and take from what this group comes up with as a baseline. Whenever you get a cookbook, it is a cookbook, and then you put grandma's recipe in and you fill in the other things. So if we talk about it, does that help you?
Yeah, so we give the binder and they fill the binder in.
Yes, but we may have some sheets in it, yes. We may have some self-start.
Yeah.
Is that?
Okay.
I think I just want to chime in here, also to just talk about, so everyone in here has a different sphere of influence and a different way that they work, and that's the beauty of all of this. And so I think, when we look at promoting an education and political will building and community, it is a two-way street. But when I think about Bob's question, like what could you do right now around what the blueprint is and what hunger is and what those impacts are? For me, you could leverage your organization's partnerships and in your board of directors and educating them, what groups do you currently work in that are working with low income, and how can we get them engaged in the blueprint? Because it is a staged approach. You have to really talk about, what we're seeing on a macro level, and then understand like that they have influence in the community, and we begin that. We need to be, anytime you guys are having a conference, when you talk to legislatures, how do we bring the blueprint in to increase the amount of allies that we have? How does the Health Foundation utilize their amazing communications platform to keep food security in there? How do we all use our newsletters to put those snippet out, and then begin those conversations that bring information forward and push information out? And that I think the blueprint and this will come out in, I think, some of the projects that are funded and some of the ways that the work groups go together, but it is intended to always be a partnership between what's happening on the ground and what needs to happen at the systems level. So, Bob, I have 1,000 ideas for you all, and I think, with each organization, there's little things that you can do and big things that you can do, but for me, the number one piece is elevating the prevalence and impact of food insecurity for folks who don't know, so that we have a broader network.
So I want to stick on our goal piece just a little bit. I don't want to lose this community organizing piece. I'm wondering if we can reword the second item under goal. So community have tools and resources needed to increase education around hunger and to increase community organizing or something like that. I don't want to lose that piece. I think that's important. That may not be perfect, but I think, well, you guys can respond to that.
Yeah, I like adding that community to that.
Okay.
One of the questions I also have as we're talking about some of this too, I think we're talking a lot about communities' ideas on how to address the solutions, but I'm wondering if we also need to have a component about really being able to identify what the problems are. Because I think sometimes that happens where you have the big people from above saying, this is the problem, so I'm going to fix it for you, but do we also need to have a component of listening to the community to understand the solutions that they need in order to address hunger as well?
And that seems like that would go in that
Okay.
action step, so that we could create the tools and resources, so that we could create the framework, right? And
Okay.
some of those things, it seems to me like that
would be a tactic to reach the
those action steps. I think there is some good information out there about stigma. May not apply to every person in every community, but I think there are some general things we know. And then depending on how this works out and the other groups, some of this will flow into the other work groups as well. We may be able to increase that understanding locally, in addition to the sort of information that we have. Some cases that it's proven to be true in Colorado.
So I have one quick comment. I'm sorry, Cindy. So for the communities have tools and resources need to increase education around hunger. I'm wondering if the work group would be comfortable also adding in around hunger and the solutions to hunger, or I don't think it's just about educating on hunger, but it's also the solutions to fix the issue.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like there's consensus for that.
I had one more thought too.
Yeah.
Someone not too long ago cautioned me against using the word describing that my work in some way is empowering someone else.
Okay.
So to be careful using that word and that phrase, that we're in some way empowering them because they're already empowered, and
I guess
just
my
need
thought was
resources.
to take out that third or that fourth one
Okay.
altogether, but I'm fine to leave. I was moving the community organizing up to that second one and taking out the fourth one, but that doesn't have to be the way it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the other thing is I don't know how we measure empowerment.
Right.
Yeah. And that might, to your point, that might be, so I'm trying to think about like what we can get our arms around in terms of both understanding our success and setting up some sort of larger evaluation framework. So that was my thinking in adding it to the second one, but I'm open to other stuff. So we got about 7 minutes left. This is great. I mean, I feel like we're having this conversation, so thank you. We do not have time to start another one, which is totally fine. Doesn't feel like, which is fine. There's good energy around this. Do we want to think a little bit? So, any more conversation on the goals right now? This does not have to be the only goals we ever have, but for today, are we comfortable with this? Are there other thoughts people want to share? Do we need to tweak these? So hearing nothing, we're going to move on to action steps, which tends to be far more engaging for folks and a little bit easier to sort of think about practically what would we do. So we have moved some of our conversation to this space already, and I would welcome us to think about additional things or to elaborate on some of what we have here.
I guess the first thing that comes to mind for me is kind of understanding what community-driven practices are already going on. We're not going to know it comprehensively, but a few, because I think that'll give us a starting point to better understand that. I know, these are a few, for sure. But I'm saying, no, I agree. But I think we all need to do that more, and I think we need to think more broadly as well. So that would be like my first starting.
And I think we can gather that fairly, what we know, I think we can pull together fairly quickly. So again, we know some of the things that are happening and some of that stuff, so I think, yes, we should have that, and yes, we can probably publish that without too much. At least of what we know.
I mean, I would say to that, we may have a lot of resources right now, but how many of us would say that we're part of a community that's experiencing hunger? So like, you know, if we're talking about community-driven tools, I don't know if any of us here are part of communities that would have tools that like are already experiencing hunger. I mean, you've obviously worked with some that you mentioned earlier, but just putting that out there that I think there, you know, we can say we know a lot, but there's also a lot of stuff we don't.
But what about like Hunger Free Colorado does Hunger Through My Lens. So that's an example of like getting true perspective. So maybe some of our organizations or other organizations do have connections, and those are the things that I think we need to get closer to. So thinking not what we're doing, but like how we're connecting to organizations that are doing things.
And for those of you who don't know what Hunger Through My Lens is, so we started 5 years ago as a photo voice project. So it was purely photography, but with the intention that the firsthand experts, those experiencing hunger, are able to document what hunger looks like in their lives and communities. And then as a group, those who are part of that project would then come up with captions and ways of putting that out there. And those, so it was very much a collaborative effort, and it was really owned by those who were experiencing hunger firsthand. It's now broadened, which is really exciting. So now beyond photography, people can submit stories by audio, by visual, even by artwork. And so we've already been doing a lot of interviews with immigrants who are experiencing hunger and what that story looks like. We've got some that are purely Spanish interviews that have been translated. We've been branching into a lot of other communities. We've got a youth group out in Pitkin County who's doing purely stories from children and their youth perspective on hunger. So really excited about that, and obviously would be a tool through the website hungerthroughmylens.org where we'd be able to use those stories and that insight and input directly from those.
So maybe it's a tactic under the figuring out where we don't have information, right? Like, let's figure out where we do have information and figure out from folks. What else? As we've got about four-ish minutes left.
I was thinking, this might have been more towards the other goal I was thinking of, but not understanding quite how the structure of the Blueprint governance structure and the work group, but one of the action steps could be to secure funding for this work. I think that's something we need to make sure that we keep an eye on.
Yep. I think let's note that.
So then, can I just ask, do you believe that that is tactic or goal? Or is it in both places?
I think it's a tactic to fulfill all goals, but also the goal too.
Well, that's why I'm just asking for clarification from the group.
I think one of the things that I've heard across the state over the last several years I've been doing this work is that we don't have, and it goes to Michelle, the third goal. We do need funding to have a conversation and promote food as a nutrition and health resource, and that does need to be funded, and it does need to support the federal food programs and goals 4 and 5. But right now, you can walk into nonprofits and they may or may not have a darn sign about food anywhere, but they're going to have a Medicaid sign, Connect for Health, CHIP, Medicaid, and it's going to be consumer friendly. And so to me, that's a really good starting point, is to be able to communicate to consumers who are, and residents that do need food, that it is not something that is stigmatized, and we do need a marketing campaign about that. And so, you know, it probably goes into the third goal on this, but we need to get active on that pretty quickly. And it is, you know, to me, it's low-hanging fruit because it's really just money. It's not that we don't know what the best practices are for engaging different populations and engaging consumers directly about what's available in a way that's respectful. I mean, we have them all from all over the country. So to me, it's somebody needs to write a check.
Great, so we got like 1 minute left. Are there other, as for those of you who wrote down on the sheet or did some thinking before we had our group conversation, are there other tactics we want to make sure we document today?
So if we're saying multiple integrated collaborations with diverse perspectives and sectors as a goal, are we also identifying, you know, in a tactic or action step, some of the organizations that are already doing this work that can help with collaboration? Because, you know, I know several churches that are already doing food banks. I know several nonprofit organizations that are already having food banks, that are already in direct, you know, connection with families that are in need, that could probably, if they knew about the Be Heard Mile High, can offer this, you know, say to these families, would you be willing to, you know, answer the questions on this survey? I am already facilitating a leadership workshop with families who want to participate in community projects to help their community. Hunger could be one of those, or maybe for participants in the past. So me just saying in a newsletter, here's something you can get involved with, you know, I may have several folks that are, I'm all over that, you know. Just let me know more information.
So would the tactic be to create a list of potential partners? Is that, am I saying, reflecting that?
Yes, for the collaboration piece, yeah.
And could I add to that, that I think another piece of that would be trying to figure out a way to bring those people together in one room like what we're doing. So to bring them together so that they can share the intersections between their work and start building, because really that's where it starts, is just, in my mind, is just with this kind of conversation.
Great. So we've got about 5 minutes left. I'm going to ask you to do one more exercise, and then we'll do a few next steps kinds of things. So as you look through what we have here, which is not an exhaustive list of the tactics and action steps, I'd like you to take just a minute and look through that list and identify 2 where you would like to participate. So where you will actually put in some time and effort and some energy, or to bring your organization to the table around. So please look through this list and think about a couple of things where you will engage. Okay, so I'd like to go around, and you can say one or both, or you can pass it. That is more comfortable for you. But would love to have folks just go around and say sort of what their feelings about actively engaging. So who would like to go?
I would, if they're numbered, let's see, 1 and 4. Create a list of potential partners to connect or bring together, share intersections of work, and identify population needs and relevant methods.
Sorry, and what's your name?
Tawan.
Okay, well.
I'll go. I'd love to be involved in the understanding the cause of stigma. We've done some research with audiences with WIC, and the creating the tools whichever, or it's up there a couple times.
All right, who else?
I'd say,
Um,
oh, go ahead.
Number 4, I meant, number 6 is for, I didn't.
Sorry that I'm about to tell everybody.
Okay, Vinny, you're on.
So I would be willing to help with the creating the tools. I think that's number 5 up there, and then the understanding what community-driven efforts exist or are currently.
Sorry, what was
The understanding what community-driven.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like down there.
Okay, great. Well,
I'd like to work on the identifying barriers to food insecurity screening. And I don't think Tawana wanted to do that.
Yeah, you didn't.
So you're welcome. We're the one. Sharing it.
Number 5 and number 6 could be.
well,
My name's Austin, and I would do, number 1 with Tawana, and, where was it? Let me find it again. The one about the people, community ambassadors, number 3. And actually, I'd also do with understand what community-driven practices with Vinny. Yep.
So I think too with the understanding the cause of stigma, but make a lot of sense. And then also, happy to help with like the tools and the resources as well. Great.
Can you add me to the stigma too?
And that would be me too, Max.
Sorry.
Great.
And then I'll do number 6 and 5. I'm interested.
great. Well, we're right at 12, so I will say thank you very much for your participation today. I think it's good progress, things to think about, which is super. We are going to continue this work at our next meeting, obviously, because we've got more priorities we want to think about and some things we want to move forward on. Please, when you get the email from Trailhead, fill out with everything that's good for this group, and then note if there's different work groups, the kinds of things that are going on, so we can start to get our arms around what that looks like. Think about co-chair or the chair position for this committee, please. You've got some information. If you are interested in self-nominating, please send an email to hunger@trailhead.institute and let us know. We can have that conversation at our next meeting. Anything else?
Yes, we will collect your all's sheets, just so that we can have those and add to the conversation, in preparation for the next meeting. We also have an evaluation survey. You have 2 minutes to fill out and provide any feedback that you have on this meeting. And then, if you are accepting a stipend for your participation, please come see me afterwards for the gift card. I know that some of you are getting checks, so we will process them back in as well. Follow-up email will also come shortly.
Great, thank you all. Please drive safely. Please drive safely and have a great afternoon. Yeah, so the email about the job is coming over.
Yep.
Yep.